Good evening, and thank you for joining us. This is a special conversation that we're bringing in, given all of the matters that are happening in our country, but specifically looking at what's going on in the courts. The Supreme Court has registered a suo motu case, which means that it has chosen to take up the matter, has not been brought before it. A suo motu case concerning the issues arising out of the COVID-19 pandemic, the second wave, and the management of that crisis that's unfolding in various states. Or the lack of management, one could argue. The bench headed by the Chief Justice of India, Chief Justice Bobde, has also appointed senior advocate Harish Salve as amicus curiae to assist the court in that matter. What this effectively also does is taking over or transferring all of the cases that the high courts are currently hearing. Now, high courts of Delhi, Bombay, Sikkim, Madhya Pradesh, Calcutta, and Allahabad are hearing different matters at this point about the access to oxygen, about essential drugs, about the vaccination process, and of course the lockdown. You'll remember the Allahabad High Court had passed an order instructing a lockdown in 5 districts of Uttar Pradesh, which then the Supreme Court stepped in and put a stay on. The Supreme Court has said that these various cases at this point is causing confusion, and has decided that it will adjudicate a matter on oxygen, essential drugs, vaccination, and the power to declare a lockdown. Now, this decision by the Supreme Court has also come under a fair amount of criticism, and we're going to try and understand why. Joining me this evening is Mr. Dushant Dave, senior advocate with the Supreme Court and the former president of the Supreme Court Bar Association. Mr. Dave, good evening, and thank you for making time to speak with me. Do I understand correctly that you disagree with the decision of the Supreme Court to take over these matters from high courts?
Disagreement is a very mild, statement. In fact, I deprecate the move by the Supreme Court to take these matters into its own hands. Having slept over the issue for last several months or maybe almost a year plus, the Supreme Court suddenly decides to take suo motu cognizance when high courts are in session of the matter because of serious situations developing in each state. The Supreme High Courts are also constitutional courts, as the Supreme Court is. And in fact, under our constitution, high courts have even wider power than Supreme Court, because Supreme Court can only enforce fundamental rights. The high courts have power to enforce fundamental rights as also the legal rights in addition. And high courts know the situation within their state, and therefore the high courts really are ultimate protector of fundamental rights, human lives, and right to life particularly of the citizens within their state. Now, if the high courts have decided to intervene because of impending emergency situation, somewhere oxygen is not available, somewhere vaccines are not available, somewhere beds are not available in hospital, there is no doubt in my mind today that in this country presently there is an anarchy which is prevailing. There is no governance left whatsoever. Now, in those situations, there was a duty on the part of the courts to have stepped in. Frankly, to my mind, even the high courts are quite late. They should have stepped in weeks ago. I mean, by January and February beginning, we had all the signs of impending crisis in this country, and everybody slept over, including the courts. But be that as it may, if the high courts have decided to intervene, then I think it's a welcome move. And the Supreme Court, therefore, which really has done great disservice to this country. And I'll tell you why. This is the same bench of Chief Justice Bobde, which last year entertained a petition when migrant crisis was going on, and issued a notice for 24 hours without any kind. It was a self-serving petition filed by somebody at the instance of the government. And within 24 hours, Chief Justice Bobde's bench gave a complete clean sheet to the government, saying that there is no migrant crisis. This is all fake news. The Solicitor General said this is fake news, and the Supreme Court accepted it. And then it doesn't stop there. The Supreme Court reminded the citizens that there is National Disaster Management Act. And under that act, the citizens can be prosecuted and sent to jail if they do not follow the guidelines issued by the government. This is that Supreme Court. Instead of, subsequently in August, Prashant Bhushan had filed a petition, Center for Public Interest Litigation. I argued that case before bench of Justice Bhushan, Justice Reddy, and Justice Shah. And we asked the Supreme Court that there is no national plan for fighting COVID. We pray, and I actually told judges that I beseech you with folded hands that please direct the government to frame a national plan, because COVID is an extraordinary situation in making, and unless and until a proper national plan which contains preventive, ameliorative, supportive and relief oriented mechanism, unless that is there in consultation with the best experts in the field, we will not be able to fight COVID. The Supreme Court was told by government that we have a plan of 2019, which is good enough. If you read that plan of 2019, which I don't think anybody in this country has cared to read, sadly, that plan does not even use the word COVID. It has one little word here or there about something called virus, nothing else. Now, that plan was wholly insufficient and incapable of meeting a crisis like this. If at that stage Supreme Court had stepped in and seriously directed the government to frame a proper national plan to be ready, we would be ready and we would have had no problem whatsoever. The fault not only lies at the doorstep of the government for failing, but also at the doorstep of the judiciary.
Mr. Dave, I just want to go back to what you said. You used a very strong word. You said we're in a period of anarchy. That's a tough word to be using at this point. Would you tell us why you believe that we're in a period of anarchy at this point?
Where is governance today? Where is governance today? I mean, you are seeing today, look at the plight of the people across city, across village, in every hospital, on every road. They are left to fend for themselves. They are crying with their family members there, begging to enter the hospitals for treatment, begging to get oxygen, begging to get vaccination, begging to get ventilator, begging for an ambulance, begging for a shab vahini, begging for cremation. They are all asking, what does it show? It shows that government is singularly absent to come to their help at all. And that is a sign of anarchy. Just look at the situation. Oxygen tankers are being looted. COVID vaccines are being stolen. What kind of a nation we are? It's a nation where there is complete failure of administrative machinery and police machinery. And I don't blame police. I do not blame, because they have been working hard for over a year in the most trying circumstances. We have made ourselves into a police state. They have been used for all kinds of nonsensical duties. And they have been made to stand, for last 1 year. They have really done great job, as have our doctors, our nursing staff, our hospital staff, our cleaning staff in the country. They have all done. But now there is a point of saturation which has reached. Can you imagine the plight of these doctors, nurses, and others in hospitals? So who is there to help them? Do you see a single minister visiting any hospital today? Do you see this great prime minister who loves to talk his man ki baat, coming to the people and saying that I am here standing outside the hospital. I am trying to see what arrangements are being made. I am trying to see what is being made. There is complete lawlessness in this country.
Mr. Dave, I want to ask you specifically of one thing. Now, the Supreme Court itself has argued that because various high courts are looking at these matters differently, that it's causing a certain amount of confusion. Is there room here for an argument that if the Supreme Court, actually looks at these matters, that we will have more coherence and perhaps centralized decision making on the management? Like you said, we need a national plan. Are we more likely to get a national plan through the Supreme Court?
I am really amused by these words that Supreme Court has used. I don't think Chief Justice Bobde has ever read the judgment given by his brother judges in August of 2020. It is a 20-page judgment. And in that, we argued extensively for a national plan. And his Supreme Court rejected it. He sent that matter to that bench. He has been selectively sending these politically sensitive matters to particular benches. And these benches are not, I swear to God, that if this matter had been sent to any independent bench, they would have really taken up our pleas with open arms. Judges like Justice Nariman, Justice Lalit, and many other judges in the Supreme Court would have really, heard us patiently and would have said, yes, Mr. Dave, Mr. Bhushan, you have a point. This is a matter which requires a very serious, examination by us. The government virtually treated the Supreme Court with contempt, because I remember that day when matter was on a particular day being argued by us. Justice Bhushan told Solicitor General Mr. Tushar Mehta that your affidavit is wholly incomplete. Please file a better affidavit. Mr. Mehta retorted saying that whatever it is my affidavit. I don't want to file any more affidavit. And judges accepted it. They gulped it down and they gave a judgment. Now, what is Chief Justice Bobde talking about? Does he not know the law laid down by the Supreme Court? He can't really go behind it. So I think today's hearing, frankly, I am really amused, and I am very, very surprised that Chief Justice Bobde suddenly wakes up from his slumber and says that, no, there is confusion likely to be caused. Frankly, there is confusion in the mind of the Supreme Court, with utmost respect.
Mr. Dave, there's also perhaps an argument that high courts, understand the issues on the ground better in their respective states and are able to adjudicate faster because they understand those details. Is it likely that the Supreme Court's decisions on these matters are going to take even longer at a time when time is of the essence in these cases?
Firstly, Supreme Court will not give decisions. Looking at its track record, its decision will be in favor of the government. Therefore, Supreme Court might even declare tomorrow, as Chief Justice Bobde declared, that there was no migrant crisis, it's all based on fake news. He might even say tomorrow that there is no oxygen crisis, it's all based on fake news. I, frankly, with greatest respect, I have lost all hopes, and I love this institution. I have been a lawyer for 42 years. I belong to the judiciary. My father was a judge. But I must say, these judges have, with greatest respect, conducted themselves in such a manner that they have lost all their right to command any respect from us. And I would definitely say that in a normal situation, intervention by many high courts perhaps would demand a Supreme Court's intervention, but not today. Today, the high courts are doing firefighting job in each of their states. And therefore, they must be allowed to do that. Even if one life can be saved by Delhi High Court's intervention, it is good. Is Supreme Court going to stop that and allow people to die in Delhi because oxygen is not available? I don't understand. What does the Supreme Court want to do? And why today? Why today? What? Let me ask Supreme Court. Let me ask Chief Justice Bobde frontally. What have you been doing? You were hearing for months on the matter between Tata and Shapurji Palanti, Cyrus Mistry. Was that the case during COVID time that you should have heard and decided in favor of Tata's, where Mr. Salve argued and succeeded? Was that the matter? Or there were far more important matters that you were supposed to decide that you just want to ignore? You don't decide 370, you don't decide CAA, you don't decide the bail application of thousands of citizens who are languishing in jail. You don't decide about the COVID preparedness of the government. But suddenly you hear this corporate giants matter. And now today you say, oh, suo moto, I want to do something. With great respect, no, ma'am. I think the Supreme Court has really made a serious, serious mistake in doing what it did today.
Mr. Dave, there was also the decision to appoint Senior Advocate Harish Salve as amicus curiae in this particular case. There have been a couple of questions raised about that, including the fact that no notice was given to the AG in this decision as well. But you yourself have raised an issue of a conflict of interest.
Look, Mr. Salve and Mr. Bobde went to school together. They have been close friends. In every third case, Mr. Salve is being appointed as amicus curiae by Chief Justice Bobde. And that is a matter of real concern, because this country has outstanding lawyers. Mr. Salve is a non-resident Indian. He has been living in London for a long time. He doesn't know the realities of this country. He lives, a very different life than what is being experienced by people of India today. Mr. Salve was the last person Bobde should have thought of to appoint amicus curiae. If you want to appoint an amicus curiae in a matter like this, you need somebody who has passions, who has concern for people. Mr. Salve is a very good lawyer, no doubt about it. But he's a lawyer for every corporate, from Ambani to Adani to Mr. Agarwal of Sterlite, who Mr. Salve made a statement today that Sterlite plant, which has been closed for environmental reasons in Tamil Nadu, should be opened and he should be allowed to produce oxygen. Come on now.
But Mr. Dave, is it fair even so to argue that he doesn't have concern for people?
Well, that's my view. That's my viewpoint. I'm entitled to say. I have seen Mr. Salve. I have known him very personally for a long time. I'm not meaning any disrespect to him, but I certainly feel that there are many more capable lawyers available in this country who could have been considered by Chief Justice Bobde. Mr. Salve's proximity to Prime Minister Modi and Mr. Amit Shah and the government of the day is well known. They have been using him in every matter, completely overlooking the learned Attorney General of India. Mr. Salve defends the government. Mr. Salve defended Amit Shah when he was discharged in the criminal case. Mr. Salve was the amicus curiae in Gujarat riots when in Jafia that Zakri's case, Mr. Modi got a clean sheet. Mr. Salve is omnipresent. So what do we do about that? I have no doubt about his capability. Question is Mr. Salve the only one who should be considered by the Supreme Court when he's not here? And Mr. Chief Justice has done it because of his proximity, or maybe because government wanted that. I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but I am really concerned. Let me put it this way. I am genuinely concerned about the appointment of Mr. Salve as amicus curiae in this case. And I think Supreme Court has done great disservice to itself by considering him.
So, Dave, is it likely also, and if you would please explain to our audience what it means when the Supreme Court takes over these cases? Does it mean that that high courts can no longer take cognizance of matters that are happening? Because we've seen that the high courts have actually stepped in where state governments were not doing enough, like in Gujarat, for example, in Uttar Pradesh, whereas in Maharashtra, high courts, especially the Nagpur bench, has pulled up their respective state governments. Does this mean that high courts can no longer do that?
I'll tell you something before I answer that. In
Yes.
this Islamuddin Markaz instance, thousands of innocent Muslims were jailed. And a vicious campaign was launched at that point of time in April of last year by a section of media, almost, characterizing these Muslims as walking terrorists. And it created a serious social divide for Muslims in small villages where villagers refused to go to their shops and buy even stuff. Now, a petition was filed in Supreme Court where a Muslim NGO wanted that government should take action against this section of the media under the existing provisions of the law, under Uplinking Act, etc., etc., etc. I argued that case. 6 times I appeared before Chief Justice Bobde. I begged him to intervene. He made sound and fury. He did not pass a single order directing government to take action. Now, this is the same bench of Chief Justice Bobde who has in another case issued a notice where somebody wants the Religious Places Protection Act to be declared as unconstitutional, which means that mosque in Varanasi and Mathura and many other places next to the temples should be demolished according to this petition. Chief Justice Bobde has issued a notice on that petition, sitting with another learned judge. Though sitting in 5-judge bench, Chief Justice Bobde himself in Ram Janmabhoomi judgment in December of 2019 said that this law is ultimately the best law for this country. It reflects the secular state of the nation. We must put quietus. We cannot allow past to be dug up. And we must therefore accept Ram Janmabhoomi matter. Every other religious dispute stands close by this act. And the same Chief Justice issues notice. What do you make out of this kind of behavior? To my mind, this is nothing but gross judicial misconduct. And I am really appalled by that judges can, ignore their own judgment. If executive had done this, they would have been hauled up for contempt. If parliament had done this, they would have stayed the parliamentary law. But if judges go on doing it, nothing, nobody speaks about it. Yes, intervention by the Supreme Court to stop the high courts will do a great disservice. And I have no doubt with the kind of backlash that has been generated today, the judges will think 50 times before doing that tomorrow. Because, for example, when Uttar Pradesh High Court, Allahabad High Court ordered that 5 districts you should bring a lockdown, they knew the situation of those 5 districts. Judges had material before them. For some reason, Mr. Modi, who was willing to declare a national lockdown and caused immense damage to the country with merely 560 cases on 23rd April 2020, is unmoved by 300,000 cases a day and does not want lockdown. He says, no, lockdown will cause great harm. Then you must apologize, Mr. Modi, to the nation that my lockdown in 2020 was a wrong move, was a wrong decision, and I say sorry to the country. Oh, no, come on now. This High Court should be allowed, whatever they are doing, let them do it. If they can, I mean, even High Courts have limitations today. These governments are so shameless that they will refuse to follow High Court's orders. I know that.
Mr. Dave, I just have one last question for you. And you defended Prashant Bhushan in his contempt of court case as well. You've just made some very strong statements in the last 20 minutes that we've been speaking. Are you not concerned about facing similar charges of contempt of court?
Well, I am very clear about one thing. The contempt law has one provision which is very important, where citizens must understand. Truth is a complete defense to contempt. And every word that I have said is truthful. I never say anything which is wrong, factually incorrect. I love my court, and if they think that I am committing contempt, I would be more than happy to face that contempt.
All right, Mr. Dave, thank you for speaking with me this evening. Dushant Dave, the Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court of India and former President of the Supreme Court Bar Association. Thank you.
Thank you very much.